Somewhere beneath the icy swells of the North Atlantic, the British nuclear submarine HMS Vengeance completes an extraordinary 201 consecutive days submerged. That's nearly 7 full months without sunlight, without fresh air, and without the grounding presence of Earth beneath their feet. Inside this steel cocoon, 130 sailors continue their mission with relentless discipline, enduring one of the most extreme, invisible environments known to man. There are no windows on a nuclear submarine, no rising or setting sun to mark time, just buzzing fluorescent lights, the low thrum of machinery, and the repetitive cadence of daily life lived under constant psychological and physical pressure. There are no weekends, no chances to stretch under the sky, no live calls to home. Time melts, the surface world moves on, unaware of the silent, high stakes ballet unfolding far beneath the wave. But how do they do it? How do they sleep in spaces tighter than a hallway closet? How do they serve hot meals 3 times a day without resupply for months? How do they breathe clean air and drink fresh water in a sealed metal vessel surrounded by salt and pressure? This isn't just a story about hardware or classified missions. It's a story of human resilience, of what it takes to live where no one can see you, a place where engineers become medics, cooks double as mechanics, and every sailor is trained to put out fires or repair failing systems in seconds. A world where teamwork, routine, and shared rituals are what hold people together when the world outside disappears. We'll explore how submarines convert seawater into air, how food is stored, rationed, and prepared far from shore, and how mental health is protected through structure, humor, and deep camaraderie. We'll also dive into the sacred right that turns a sailor into a submariner, earning the coveted silver dolphins. This is submarine life, where reality bends, comfort fades, and silence isn't just policy, it's survival. Sleeping aboard a submarine isn't about comfort, it's about endurance. The bunks are narrow, just 74 inches long and 25 inches wide, with a mere 18 inches of headroom. Imagine crawling into a locker with barely enough space to turn your body. These stacked rectangles, crammed 3 high into tight corridors, become each sailor's only private retreat for months on end. But even that small space isn't guaranteed. On submarines like the USS Missouri, many sailors must hot bunk or hot rack, meaning they share beds on rotating shifts. When one sailor climbs out to begin their watch, another takes their place, often slipping into sheets, still warm with body heat. Cleanliness is paramount, so is courtesy. No one wants to inherit a damp or messy bunk. Until recently, submarines followed an 18-hour schedule, divided into 3 6-hour shifts. It disrupted circadian rhythms and led to chronic fatigue. Recognizing the cost, the Navy shifted to a more natural 24-hour cycle with 3 8-hour blocks. The result? Better rest, sharper minds, and a noticeable boost in morale. Still, getting sleep remains a challenge. Sailors lie inches from roaring pipes, vibrating equipment, and humming generators. They sleep through motion, metal groans, and the ever present foot traffic of narrow passageways. But for many, those mechanical noises become a kind of lullaby, a sign that everything is still working. Some even say they sleep better undersea than on land. Each bunk includes a curtain for privacy and a small locker about the size of a briefcase. Within that tight footprint, sailors tape up photos of family, tuck away letters from home, and carve out a tiny sliver of identity. These modest personal touches are vital for morale in an environment that suppresses individuality. Sleeping beneath the ocean becomes less about shutting your eyes and more about adapting. It means drifting off inside a vibrating machine while trusting those around you and the vessel itself to keep you safe. It means embracing the strange, almost peaceful reality of slumbering in steel hundreds of feet below the light. Feeding 130 people underwater for 3 straight months without a single resupply is one of the most demanding logistical feats in military operations. Before the submarine ever casts off, it's packed tight with nearly 15,000 pounds of food, enough to sustain the crew through every meal, every shift, and every dip in morale for 90 days or more. So that's the equivalent of 3 full-size pickup trucks squeezed into every spare inch of a vessel barely wider than a city subway car. There's no traditional pantry on a submarine. Food is stashed wherever it can fit. For the first couple of weeks, sailors literally walk on top of box rations. Shower stalls double as impromptu storerooms. Even bunks get stacked with supplies. On the USS Missouri, one crew remembered sleeping on crates of canned goods until they ate their way back down to bare metal. Fresh food is fleeting. Perishables like milk, produce, and bread typically vanish within 2 weeks, three if conditions are optimal. After that, it's a diet of frozen proteins, powdered eggs, canned vegetables, and shelf stable ingredients. Yet, even in such limited conditions, submarine cooks, some of the most respected culinary professionals in the Navy, work wonders. Inside a galley no larger than a walk in closet with no open flames allowed, cooks rely on convection ovens, induction stovetops, and pressure control equipment. Still, they serve 4 complete meals a day: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a midnight meal known as mid-rats. These aren't grab and go rations. They're full plates with protein, starch, and vegetables crafted to fuel the body and lift morale during long, grinding shifts. Even more remarkable is the rotating meal schedule. Without daylight to guide hunger, sailors might find themselves eating dinner at what would be 7 a.m. To avoid monotony, the kitchen ensures all four meal types rotate through every time slot, giving each shift equal variety. No one is stuck eating scrambled eggs every midnight. And then there's the coffee, an institution unto itself. Submarines stock over 1,000 pounds of it. More than a drink, coffee is a lifeline. It fuels conversation, keeps watchstanders sharp, and creates an informal rhythm to daily life beneath the surface. The galley's coffee pot is rarely empty and never ignored. As the deployment winds down, supplies dwindle. One submarine completed their patrol with just one canned ham, some cake mix, and a few dehydrated peas. But what mattered most? Nothing went to waste. Every calorie had been carefully planned and used. It's a level of precision that defines submarine life: total efficiency, creative adaptation, and the unbreakable will to make the most of every last scrap. At first glance, a submarine seems like the least hospitable place imaginable: sealed off from the world, buried hundreds of feet beneath the ocean, surrounded by salt water and silent pressure. And yet, astonishingly, submarines sustain human life for months at a time, producing everything essential from within their own hull, starting with the most vital elements of all: air and water. Modern nuclear submarines don't store huge tanks of oxygen. Instead, they manufacture it on board using a method called electrolysis. This process draws in seawater, channels it through high voltage electrical currents, and splits water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is safely vented into the sea, the oxygen is purified, collected, and pumped into the vessel's ventilation system. The scale of this operation is extraordinary. A single adult needs roughly 600 liters of oxygen per day. Multiply that by 130 crew members, and the sub must generate more than 78,000 liters daily without interruption. Fortunately, with an onboard nuclear reactor providing endless power and an endless ocean outside, the supply can continue indefinitely. Water, too, is made from the sea. Using distillation units, submarines boil seawater and collect the resulting steam, condensing it into clean, drinkable water. These systems can generate between 10,000 and 40,000 gallons per day, plenty for hydration, food preparation, hygiene, and cooling onboard electronics. But generating air and water is only part of the challenge. The other part is removing what the body gives back, especially carbon dioxide. As the crew exhales, CO2 levels rise rapidly in the sealed atmosphere. Left unchecked, high levels can cause headaches, disorientation, even unconsciousness and death. To prevent this, submarines rely on chemical scrubbers, chambers filled with substances like soda lime that absorb and neutralize carbon dioxide. These scrubbers operate nonstop, purifying the air around the clock. Advanced sensors constantly monitor oxygen, CO2, carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and other trace gases. If any readings move out of the safe range, alarms sound and emergency protocols kick in instantly. There's no margin for error. A malfunction in the air system isn't a maintenance issue, it's an immediate threat to every life on board. That's why redundancy is built into every system, and crews train rigorously to respond. Sailors practice emergency breathing drills in pitch black conditions, sometimes even blindfolded, learning to locate and operate survival gear by memory alone. Submarines have been compared to underwater space stations, and it's not an exaggeration. These vessels are self contained ecosystems fully responsible for generating and sustaining life beneath the surface. Sailors breathe oxygen pulled from seawater, drink water drawn from the ocean, and trust the invisible systems humming around them to maintain equilibrium. And somehow, day after day, deep beneath the waves, this artificial world holds steady, quiet, precise, and unwavering. In the silent, high stakes world of a submarine, every system must function with relentless precision, not just propulsion, sonar, or weapons, but the most unglamorous system of all, waste management. When 130 crew members live inside a sealed steel vessel for months on end, managing human waste becomes more than a matter of hygiene, it's a matter of health, morale, and mission success. A single malfunction in the sewage system could lead to contamination of the air supply, flooding of critical compartments, or a forced surfacing that compromises the submarine's visibility. To prevent such crises, submarines use vacuum operated toilets that resemble those on commercial aircraft, but they're far more advanced. Each flush uses high pressure suction to send waste into specialized sanitary tanks, capable of holding up to 1,500 gallons before needing disposal. These tanks are sealed, pressurized, and designed with multiple redundancies to ensure reliability. Even if one part of the system is undergoing maintenance, the rest stays functional. But waste can't be expelled just any time. Strict international regulations and stealth requirements dictate that sewage discharge only happens in deep waters, typically more than 3 nautical miles from shore and at specific depths and speeds. Disposal becomes a choreographed operation, carefully timed and discreetly executed. Solid waste, wrappers, containers, packaging is treated with equal discipline. There are no traditional garbage cans on a sub. Instead, dry waste is compacted into perforated steel cylinders, weighted down, and ejected through a dedicated trash disposal unit. These containers are engineered to sink silently to the ocean floor, ensuring nothing floats back to betray the submarine's position. What's astonishing is how little is actually wasted. Before a mission even begins, all unnecessary packaging, especially cardboard, is stripped away dockside to save room and reduce potential hazards. Every item brought aboard is scrutinized through a simple but essential checklist. Can it be consumed? Can it be compressed? Can it be safely jettisoned? Even bathroom use demands training and etiquette. Operating the vacuum toilet requires attention to detail. Flushing at the wrong moment or pulling the lever too soon can result in backflow or system shutdowns. On older submarines, a misused head could render the entire bathroom unusable for hours, throwing daily routines into chaos and sparking frustration throughout the crew. Though it might sound comical to outsiders, beneath the surface, the stakes are serious. Waste management isn't a peripheral concern, it's part of life support. The systems are monitored, maintained, and drilled with the same level of seriousness as reactor safety or emergency protocols. In a world with no privacy and very little space, even the most basic human functions require discipline and teamwork. And for submariners, preserving dignity in those quiet daily acts is more than just protocol. It's part of what it means to survive and thrive in the deep. Technology makes life underwater survivable. It's something far more human that makes it endurable. Brotherhood. No matter how advanced the nuclear reactor, how efficient the air scrubbers, or how precisely the meals are portioned, it's the quiet code of camaraderie, the shared understanding among submariners that holds everything together when the steel walls start to close in. Aboard a submarine, personal space is a myth. Privacy doesn't exist. Every breath, every sigh, every shift in mood is shared. You sleep mere inches from someone else. You eat elbow to elbow at tables that barely fit your knees. You squeeze through hallways where two grown men can't pass without twisting sideways. In this unrelenting proximity, even minor tensions can metastasize unless something deeper is present: trust, discipline, and mutual respect. That's why submariners follow an unwritten code. Chief among its rules, no politics. Divisive topics stay ashore. The mission comes first. Personal beliefs, backgrounds, and disagreements are set aside for a single unbreakable purpose: survival and success. In a world where silence is strategic and cohesion is critical, these rules don't feel restrictive. They feel necessary. Noise discipline is sacred. At any moment, one third of the crew is asleep, so the boat must move like a whisper. No slamming hatches, no stomping boots, no shouting across compartments. Even laughter is tempered. Over time, sailors develop instinctive muscle memory. Voices lower, footsteps soften, and every gesture becomes deliberate, efficient, and almost invisible. Spatial awareness also evolves into an art form. Crew members learn to move like dancers through a narrow stage. They duck and pivot without thinking. They know where shoulders will be, how far to lean, when to pause. Collisions aren't just annoying, they're disruptive. So movement becomes graceful by necessity. Showers reflect this same ethic of mindfulness. Yes, submarines can produce their own water, but conservation remains a priority. A 5-minute shower is indulgent. Most follow the Navy shower routine: water on to rinse, off to soap, back on to rinse again. It's not just efficiency, it's respect for the next sailor in line. And when someone leaves the head clean for the next user, it's not a rule, it's a courtesy extended in silence. But what truly binds a submarine crew isn't policy, it's sacrifice. Every sailor has left something behind: birthdays missed, children growing up unseen, months of sunless isolation. And because they've all made that trade, there's a deep, unspoken empathy. Tensions are diffused before they ignite. When someone's morale dips, a crewmate steps in, not with lectures, but with quiet support. It's in the small things: a fresh mug of coffee waiting at the watch station, a private joke passed in the galley, a pat on the back in a tight corridor. These quiet acts aren't grand, they're foundational. They are how 130 individuals become a single organism, breathing and operating in harmony. Because beneath the layers of machinery, below the pressure hull, beneath the ocean itself, it's not just systems that keep a submarine afloat. It's the brotherhood forged in silence, in trust, and in a deeply human will to see each other through. Despite the layers of engineering brilliance, rigorous training, and obsessive routine that define life aboard a submarine, one fact remains unshakable: things go wrong. And when they do, there's no margin for error. No lifeboats, no hatches to throw open, no rescue helicopters waiting overhead. Beneath the waves, when disaster strikes, the only ones who can save the crew are the crew themselves. History doesn't let us forget that. On April 14th, 1945, near the end of World War II, the German U-boat U-1206 suffered a bizarre yet deadly failure. The captain, unfamiliar with a newly installed high-pressure toilet system, attempted to use it without a technician. The mistake triggered a backflow of seawater and sewage that seeped into the battery compartment. The resulting chemical reaction released poisonous chlorine gas. Forced to surface in enemy waters, the crew was spotted by British forces, attacked, and captured. One sailor died. The boat was scuttled, all because of a toilet. Absurd? Only until you grasp the delicate symphony that keeps a submarine alive. Air, water, electricity, propulsion, and waste are interdependent systems intertwined like nerves in a body. A malfunction in one can cascade into catastrophe. Submariners live with that awareness every second, not as a burden, but as a bond. It doesn't frighten them, it sharpens them. That's why drills are relentless. Fires, floods, radiation leaks, they're not just scenarios. They're rehearsals for survival. At random, klaxons blare. Flooding in the forward compartment. Fire in the galley. Radiation alarm in aft control. Sailors leap into action. Watertight doors slam shut. Masks go on. Systems reroute. No panic, just movement, just training, becoming instinct. Yet not all threats arrive with sirens. Some creep in slow, silent, and almost invisible. A barely noticeable change in pressure, a faint vibration in the hull, a whisper in the machinery. The most skilled submariners aren't those who wait for alarms. They're the ones who hear those whispers and act before they become roars. And yes, there are heroes, though they wear no capes and crave no spotlight. Sailors who wedge themselves into pitch black crawl spaces to plug a rupture with their bare hands. Cooks who abandon a sizzling oven mid-meal to join the fire brigade. Technicians who rebuild failing circuitry with scavenged parts and a soldering iron. Their names may never reach the surface, but inside the boat, their deeds become legend. When everything works, a submarine disappears from the world. Silent, unseen, invincible. But when something breaks, Survival hinges not on luck, but on muscle memory, trust, and willpower. Bravery on a submarine isn't cinematic. It's quiet, precise, ruthlessly practical. It means solving the unsolvable without flinching because you have no other choice. And perhaps most importantly, it means never facing the unknown alone. Every sailor aboard knows the stakes. Every one of them has trained for disaster. And when the moment comes, they meet it together, not with fear, but with purpose. As a submarine, it's not just a vessel, it's a crucible. It doesn't test strength the way mountains or storms do. It tests patience, self control, and the mind's ability to remain whole in a world stripped of nature, privacy, and escape. Endurance here isn't about heroism in the cinematic sense. It's the quiet triumph of showing up every day, alert and composed, inside a steel shell deep beneath the ocean. Consider the HMS Vengeance, submerged for an unprecedented 201 consecutive days under the North Atlantic. That feat isn't just technological, it's psychological. For over half a year, the crew lived without the sun, without a breeze, without rain tapping on a window or stars to orient their place in the world. The timeless rhythms of nature were replaced with fluorescent lights, artificial clocks, and the endless drone of machinery. Inside this reality, the mind begins to rebel. Without sunrise and sunset, time unspools. Days blend, nights blur. Some sailors report unusually vivid dreams. Others lose track of weeks entirely. Sensations of floating or mental detachment become common. The body's internal clock, hardwired to the cycles of daylight, slips out of sync. Melatonin, the hormone that signals rest, falters. Fatigue accumulates, not from overexertion, but from the disorienting sameness of each hour. That's why the Navy restructured watch schedules, shifting from 18-hour days to a standard 24-hour cycle with 3 8-hour shifts. It seems simple, but this move helped restore a semblance of biological normalcy. It gave the mind a handrail, a rhythm, something familiar to hold on to. But true endurance goes deeper. It's not just about sleep, but emotion. Inside of Submarine, there's no stepping outside to cool down after an argument, no fresh air to breathe away anxiety, personal grief, stress, frustration. All of it must be processed internally with stoic discipline while fulfilling mission critical duties. So the crew builds rituals. Weekly movie nights become sacred. Holiday dinners are recreated with surprising care. Some days, the engine room becomes a fake beach. Sailors lay out towels and sip soda under utility lights during steel beach picnics. Talent shows, push up competitions, and card games turn hours into memories. And when all else fails, humor becomes a shield. Dark, absurd, wildly inventive humor. It's not just a coping mechanism, it's cultural currency. A prank perfectly timed. A running joke that survives from patrol to patrol. Laughter in the deep is more than relief. It's resistance against isolation. Still, records like 201 days underwater aren't about setting limits. They're about expanding what's possible, not just for the Navy, but for humanity. They prove that with preparation, unity, and enough psychological ingenuity, people can thrive where no human was ever meant to live. And when the boat finally surfaces, when that first shaft of sunlight pierces the control room and fresh air floods down the ladder, there are no medals handed out, no speeches, just the silent pride of those who've lived through the impossible, who didn't merely survive the depths, they conquered them. There's no spotlight on submarine life, no heroic soundtracks, no viral footage, no triumphant homecoming ceremonies with flags waving in the breeze. The missions are classified, the movements unannounced, the service rendered without audience or applause. And that, by design, is its truest honor. This is the silent service, a realm of the military built not on spectacle, but on secrecy, a force defined not by the battles it wins, but by the wars it prevents. Submariners vanish beneath the surface to carry out the missions no one sees, to deter, to observe, to guard, and sometimes simply to exist as a shadow that reminds the world not to misstep. But their greatness lies not in the machinery they command. It lies in what they carry into that machinery. Humanity. They live in a metal hull where no grass grows, no sunlight filters, and no birds sing. Yet inside that hull, they laugh, they cry, they celebrate birthdays with box cake mix. They mark holidays with hand drawn cards. They find ways to be human in the most unhuman place on earth. They return thinner, paler, and quieter. They step off the boat with the easy grace of people used to walking through narrow corridors in silence. The world often doesn't notice. The world doesn't need to. Because submariners don't serve for recognition. They serve because the deep demands guardians. And they've answered that call. And ask them, any one of them, and they'll tell you, part of them stays down there in the pressure, in the quiet, in the ritual of watches and drills, in the smell of machinery and coffee, in the camaraderie forged through hardship. They've known what it is to live removed from the world and to hold that distance like a sacred responsibility. And after a few weeks on land, once the noise returns, once the pace resumes, once the sky feels almost too open, they go back. Not because they must, but because they can. Because beneath the surface, in the hush of the deep, the silent server stands ready, watching, waiting, enduring,